Have you ever made a video of yourself and got emotional watching yourself tell that story? 6 years ago, I made that video, January of 2018. Hey everyone, happy Monday. I tried to start this video a few minutes ago, but I decided to restart it because I had some things I had to get into place. So I hope you guys are off to a great Monday and a great week in the new year. I wanted to pop in here really quick and share a story with you guys about something that's very near and dear to my heart. I go live on Facebook a lot. I don't know why I'm so nervous today. I guess it's because I'm actually sharing a very personal story. And I've tagged my brother, Richie Harrison, in this video as well, because he was a huge part of this story too. And I want to talk about a few things, but I will share my story in just a minute. But the first thing I wanted to discuss with everybody is about Blue Monday and what Blue Monday is and why they allotted the second or third week in January as a Blue Monday. And what I have come to find after researching and investigating about Blue Monday and what it is it's a couple weeks after the new year. It's a couple of weeks after the holidays have passed where people find themselves depressed. Maybe they have made a New Year's resolution that has went south. They're in debt and overweight. So I thought this is a really big day for me in general as a whole. It's my husband's birthday, but it's also the 25th year death anniversary of losing my mother and her passing, which doesn't seem like 25 years. It seems like yesterday. It's really bizarre. But I'm 39 now, so I had just turned 14 when I lost her on January 8th of 1993. My brother was 7, which is close to the age of my son right now. And so I'm looking at things a little differently and trying to understand things that are out of my understanding is impossible. And I have to rein my kind of feelings back in and just realize that there are certain things that I will never be able to understand or comprehend or make sense of, and that's completely fine. And it's also a huge advocate and believer in what you do with the tragedies that you've been through in your life is what defines you, not what you went through, but actually what you do with those tragedies is what makes you who you are. Okay, on to my story and the hardest part of this video. Whew, okay, so I am the daughter of law enforcement. My brother is also. Both our mother and our fathers were police officers in Miami, Florida. We had a good life. We were, like I said, law enforcement kids, so needless to say, friends were terrified to stay over at our house. There was definitely no getting away with anything. My mom was a police officer. She was a dispatcher turned police officer. In Miami. She worked for Metro-Dade Police Department. I think now they call it Miami-Dade Police Department. But she was extremely, thanks Brandy. She was extremely proud of her job. And I will tell you, my mom was 5'4" and she was nobody that you wanted to toy with. That's for sure. I remember an incident one point in time. We were going to see George Michael with my cousin Nicole and my Aunt Maria. And, there was a guy that would not leave us alone as we were walking to the venue to see George Michael, and we were in a place called Bayside, and my mom actually like pulled her gun out, and it was a really big deal. She was a tough cookie. She worked midnights in a place called Carroll City in Liberty City. I know that you probably heard of it. Carroll City is a rough part of town, and she was not afraid of anything. I don't think that she was afraid of anybody or anything, and she had some big accomplishments as a law enforcement officer. She was with the Women Federal Law Enforcement, I think it's called WFDLE or something like that, and she was a huge advocate for women, which I think is like really important now after watching, the Golden Globes and hearing about what's going on, how big of an advocate she was back then in the 90s for women's rights and all kinds of stuff. Okay, we're going to talk about January 8th, 1993, and a little bit about leading up to that day. I was a teenager. I cared more about my friends than I did anybody else, and I was a brat, a spoiled one at that. And weeks leading up to, we'll start with about Christmas time area, Thanksgiving. My mom found herself in going through her 4th or 5th divorce. She was single, and she just had me and my little brother Richie. And Hurricane Andrew had just hit South Florida. So my mother was working 12-hour shifts, and when your step-parent is also a law enforcement officer and the police department knows you have children, they would rotate, one would work 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. and then the other partner would work 8 p.m. to 8 a.m. And so my stepfather had moved out, they were separated, they were on their way to get a divorce. And when Hurricane Andrew hit in October, my mom was completely exhausted. She was really, really stretching everything to the limit. She was involved at my school with, my sports and cheerleading and softball and volleyball. And she was involved taking my brother to football all the time. And she just stretched herself to the limit. Financially, she was not in a good place. The only vehicle that she had was her patrol car. Unfortunately, my brother and I were close enough to our private school that we could walk back and forth from there. I noticed a few things going on with my mom, but again, I was 14, or turning 14, 13 to 14. Leading up to Christmas, she had passed out. She wasn't eating right. She'd really, she was walking across the living room floor with her full laundry basket full of clothes, and she just hit the deck. And I panicked and I ran and I called 911, and she came to about the time I was on the phone with them and giving them directions, and she was a law enforcement officer, so she knew exactly what to tell them to back them off. And she got on the phone and she said, "I'm denying treatment. I'm fine. I'm a Metro-Dade police officer. I don't want anyone coming here. I'm not going anywhere. I just need to eat something, yada, yada, yada." So looking back now, I realized that, she was extremely, extremely depressed and not taking care of herself, barely eating anything and not getting any sleep at all whatsoever. We had a Christmas trip planned to go to Disney World with my Aunt Marlene and my grandma and my grandpa and my cousins Scott and Stephanie and my brother and I, Richie. And so for those of you that live in Florida, you go to Disney World once a month or once every couple of weeks. I mean, it was like our second home. We were there all the time. And so we spent Christmas there. And I remember driving up with my brother. Again, he was 7. I was 14. And my mom just did a lot of crying the whole way there. We got there. She barely got out of the bed. Her mom was there, my grandmother. And she was not happy with her behavior. She was yelling at her a lot. And my mom just spent a lot of time in the bed. And when I look back at the pictures, I just see a lot of not smiling, very sad, sad, sad eyes. Of course, now looking back, you can see all this stuff, right? So we did our thing in Disney World, and when we went to leave, we ate at Piccadilly's restaurant. I don't know if you guys have ever heard of it, but it's like a buffet-style restaurant. And my mom said her goodbyes to her mother and her stepfather and her sister-in-law, and she literally cried the whole way home. And I think she knew at that point in time that that was the last time she was going to see those people. We got home, school started back up again, and things were odd. Things were really, really odd. She just was very, very reclusive, and she was seeing a counselor. I remember going with her sometimes, and things were very quiet and still. The morning of January 8th, 1993, we got up for school. I remember I put on a jumpsuit and I was ready to go. I was ready to see my friends. If I got there early, I could spend time with my friends. And I was looking for my mom and my brother. And when I walked into her bedroom, she had a love seat in there where her bed was also. And she had my brother, Richie, by his hands, and he was 7. And she was talking to him. And I was like, "Come on, let's go. I've got, places to go and people to see." And she was having a very private conversation with him. And she turned and looked at me and she said, I was wearing this ring that she had gotten in Key West, and she said, "Oh, I remember the day I got you that ring. It had a little shell on it. It was made with gold wire." And she said, "I remember that day I got you that ring." And I was like, "So what? Let's go." I remember all of it very clearly. And so we got into the vehicle, and she dropped us off at school. And it was a private school. It was a very close-knit private school. And I remember getting out of the car and her rolling down the window and just telling Richie and I how much she loved us. And that was it. That was the last time I saw her. I went to my class, and I was coming down the stairs at school from my classroom, which was on top of the sanctuary at the time. And I remember a lady named Miss LaForte. She was an office lady, and she had my brother by the hand. And she was walking towards me, and I was walking down the stairs, headed to lunch to eat with my class. And everyone's like, oh, Miss LaForte's here and your brother's there. And I'm like, what did you do, Richie? Like, you obviously got into trouble or something. So she walked us, my class went this way around the building, and she walked us this way around the building. And she never looked up at me, Miss LaForte. She just had her head down, and she was walking very swiftly. And as soon as she pulled the door open, there stood every single police officer you could ever imagine in this very teeny tiny small office. And another office lady, Miss Hill, was crying. Miss LaForte was crying. Mr. Emery was there. He was my principal. Mr. Everett was there. He was my assistant principal. And there were about 10 police officers in uniform. And my dad was there in his uniform. And my brother's dad was there in his uniform. And I just remember I started screaming, what happened to my mom? What happened to my mom? In hindsight, my 7-year-old brother's standing there. But I knew the minute that door flung open and I saw all those people there, and my mom was the only one missing, that something was terribly, terribly wrong. And I knew. And I remember running through the office door into the lunchroom and grabbing my friends and saying, my mom's gone, my mom's gone. And I don't even know what was going on with my brother at that time. But everyone knew my mom. She was very involved at my school, and with my events. She really tried to be everywhere all at the same time. And I remember being walked back into this office, and all of the local law enforcement was there. And my dad was there, and they had a counselor there, and they asked us, do you want to talk to this counselor? And at first I said no, and then I said yes. And I remember being taken into this office, and my brother was taken into an office with his dad and a counselor, and I was taken into an office with my dad and a counselor. And I just decided, I don't want to talk about this right now. I was 14. I just turned 14. And I got in the vehicle with my dad. I was looking for one of my friends to come with me. I just wanted to be around one of my friends, and eventually one of my friends ended up coming over. But as soon as I got into the truck with my dad, I looked at him and I said, Dad, did she leave me a note? I knew. And he pulled the note out of his pocket, and I read it. I remember knowing that it was her decision to no longer be present. And I remember that day, not only did I lose my mom, but now me and my brother had to go live with our dads. So now I have a 7-year-old, so my whole life as I knew it just kind of exploded. I was dropped off at school literally with my own bedroom that I had painted mint green, and my brother had his room and his bunk beds right next door, and that was no longer a life that we had. 6 years ago, I made that video, January of 2018. What a lot of you don't know, unless you're really close to me, is that I was a huge suicide prevention advocate, and I held annual walks every year at the high school where both of my daughters graduated, and that my grandfather and grandmother would walk with me in honor of my mother, which was his stepdaughter and her daughter, every year. And that I grew this walk with the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention into something really big. And then in March of 2019, I lost my grandfather the same way, using a weapon of the same weapon as my mother did to end his life. And I say all of that to say this: sling light and not hate. Be a light slinger. What that means is to leave someone a little better off than they were when you first crossed paths with them, and know that God specifically puts you in the line of sight of every single person in your life, whether it be for a day or for your life on earth. For a reason, you cross paths with these people, and you never truly know what someone is going through, ever. Kindness is everything in the day and age we're living in right now. And because September has now been deemed Suicide Prevention Month, educate yourself. Research it. Learn what Blue Monday is in January. I lost my mother January 8th of 93. Educate yourself with what to do and what not to do, what to say and what not to say, when to call for help and when to stay silent, which is never. And above all, with everything that's going on right now, just love one another. If someone doesn't agree with you politically, religiously, who cares? If they're a good person, a good human being, love them. That's it. Okay, bye.